Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm talking about the latest Alien installment in the Alien franchise entitled Alien Romulus. This film is directed by Fede Alvarez, who directed Don't Breathe and the remake of Evil Dead a couple of years back. This is my first kind of Fede Alvarez film, so I really don't have a lot of knowledge as far as like how I felt about his other films went, unfortunately. But I am kind of familiar with his filmography. It's one of those weird things where you know what that director's done, but you haven't personally experienced all those films for yourself quite yet. But in this film, Alien Romulus, you guys, this is going to be a spoiler-free review, so I'm going to try to keep this as spoiler-free as I can. But basically, we follow a group of young space explorers. They are kind of all in a situation where none of them can really go on like vacation or get promoted into like a bigger spaceship. So they basically all assemble together. They manage to find this smaller spaceship that they can maneuver and manage themselves. And so there is this exploration of basically finding a better life for themselves together. And so on their way to this journey, or basically why they get up when they get up to space for this journey, there's a lot of things that they cover that don't feel quite right. There's this abandoned spaceship that has a bunch of destroyed stuff. Um, Laboratory work, things that are locked up in, doors that you need a password for, and things like that. And so things really start to go wrong when one of the space explorers gets locked into one of these doors accidentally, and this unleashes a new race of xenomorphs slash face huggers that we know from the Alien franchise. Thus, they become victim to the alien species that we've come to know from this franchise as well. But overall, guys, Alien Romulus was just an okay experience for me. I'm one of those weird people where Aliens from James Cameron, and Prometheus from Ridley Scott, so basically two Ridley Scott films, one James Cameron film from this franchise, were kind of the three films that kind of made me appreciate the franchise the most. I thought they were the franchise running at its best. I particularly enjoy James Cameron's Aliens the best out of all the Alien films personally. What I liked about Prometheus is it did try to do something new with the franchise. It tried to do something more meaningful. It tried to comment about life and how creating life has both a good and a bad side to it. And it just tried to do something new. It was just an alien film that did something new, tried to explore something new, gave us new characters, since obviously Sigourney Weaver is probably a little too old to play Ripley now at this point. And it just tried to do something new. It tried to do something different and unique. And, Ridley Scott was kind of in a slump at the time anyway, so he really needed a hit for himself. And it was just a unique, different film. And then we got Alien Covenant, and they tried to do more of a traditional Alien film again. And that's kind of where the franchise lost me again. It's like, I think we're kind of done with the traditional stuff. We're done with sending explorers into space. They encounter the alien, and then madness happens. I think we're kind of past that at this point. I think doing something along the line of what Prometheus was trying to do, where you could still have that badness, you could still have the aliens, but exploring something new, exploring something bigger than the franchise could ever imagine that it could do. And unfortunately, Alien Romulus just falls in that category like Alien Covenant did, where it's just kind of more of the same stuff, more of the same thing, not exploring something new. Really, the only new things here are the new characters that we follow along on this adventure, and everything else is just kind of traditional alien stuff, unfortunately. But I do want to go over some positives and negatives as to why I felt this way. Why there are certainly some good things about Alien Romulus. It's certainly not the worst of the franchise or anything. And I do want to go over some negatives as to why I really wouldn't consider it the best of the franchise either. So for my positives and negatives, the use of sound I thought was incredibly good in this film. So whether that's a Fede Alvarez thing that he added to the franchise himself, or just the sound department of this movie, or just the way that was decided for this movie, I thought all that was very good. I thought the use of sound was great. The way the aliens pound through somebody's chest, and it really does sound like it's peeling through flesh and stuff like that. Um, the way that the face huggers, when they're crawling through hallways, the way they sound like gigantic spiders and stuff like that. So I thought the use of sound I thought was very done here, whether it's making you feel grossed out, making you feel scared about what's going on with the characters, or even just the way that the film kind of immerses you in this outer space environment that you really feel like you're kind of there with the characters. So use of sound was really good in this movie. There's also tons of references and continuations that happen from earlier Alien films. Without giving too much away, I can safely tell you this film takes place after the first Alien film from Ridley Scott from the 70s, but before Aliens with James Cameron. So it's kind of right in that weird middle area where it's after the first Alien, so clearly it's not, a prequel to the first film, but it's happening before the James Cameron Alien sequel. So it's kind of one of those. It's a prequel and a sequel at the same time. So it's kind of one of those weird middle areas. So it's kind of a side quill, if you will. But I liked all the references and the continuations of this story. All the references they did to earlier Alien films and how they continued on with things that happened in earlier Alien films and how that impacts the characters we're following in this film and how that continues on without giving too much away. Characters that we've met in earlier Alien films and how their mission kind of helps their mission succeed with other characters kind of continuing their work in a way, if that makes any sense. I also thought the second half of this film was also pretty tense for the most part. That's kind of when the real alien stuff happens. That's when kind of the madness happens with these alien creatures and them kind of attacking these space explorers. Pretty tense second half, pretty impressive stuff. They definitely have a lot of quotes and things that remind you of earlier Alien films for sure. So the second half of the film, if you're there for the alien action, there's quite a bit of it in that second half. This is also the first Alien film in a while to use practical effects, and I'm glad that Fede Alvarez kind of pushed the studio into trying this again. Definitely had like a Stan Winston special effects era kind of a feel. I do like how they tried to do practical aliens for a lot of these scenes in this movie. Really did kind of add to the moment. I'm sure it helped the actors and actresses express themselves a little better in the situations they were in. So use of practical effects, pretty cool. So if you like the way Stan Winston handled that stuff back in the 70s and 80s, and I think even parts of the 90s as well, those kind of special effects and practical effects are back for this film. And overall, I do like how Fede Alvarez, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, kept most of his action in camera. I do like when filmmakers don't rely on shaky cam, don't rely on dark rooms, don't rely on, this person's running, so therefore we have to shake the camera around, and you'll see them running, but you probably won't see anything else. I do like how Fede Alvarez kept most of the action in camera. There's a couple scenes where it's like, okay, maybe the lighting could have been a little better in this part and stuff like that, but for the most part, his action scenes are in camera. We do, for the most part, see what's going on with the characters, with the action, and it's great to see another filmmaker making sure that everything he's filming makes it in the camera, and that us as the audience get to see what exactly is going on in the story. But for my negatives of Alien Romulus, unfortunately, this is just another Alien movie. It is just another space explorers going into space. They encounter some aliens. Madness happens. And unfortunately, it's just another movie where that exact formula happens again. And unfortunately, like I said, besides like the use of sound and stuff that Fede Alvarez himself added to the franchise, it really doesn't have a lot of new things to say. Unfortunately, it is just another alien story with this typical formula, with happening somewhere in the timeline of the first three Alien films somewhere, and here we are with another Alien film. It just kind of felt that way to me. And overall, too, I thought the first half of this film was very slow. It's a very slow-going movie at first. I get the idea of slow burn. I get the idea of building up suspense. But the first half of this film is, in particular, really slow. There's just a lot of situations where you almost kind of have to remind yourself that you're watching an alien film, just because it does take so long to get to the point. It does take so long to finally get the plot going of where the film's going to go. So I thought the first half was extremely slow. I don't know if it just needed to cut some stuff, or they needed to find a way to get things moving along better. I did think the first half of this film was particularly really slow, though. Another negative I had, and I kind of brought this up earlier, is the film just needs to try new stuff. I think this franchise is at a point where if you're going to make more Alien films, you got to do some new stuff. You got to go back to Prometheus, see what they were doing, introduce new stuff, focus on creation, focus on larger than life ideas that haven't been explored in the alien stuff yet. You got to make it more about than just space explorers running away from aliens. You got to do more with the franchise now at this point. You got to do something with the xenomorphs. You got to do something with the humans. You got to do something with the real world, like what's going on Earth while all this is happening. There's just a lot of stuff that they need to do to make the franchise feel new and fresh again. I just feel like Alien Romulus is just more of the same stuff, unfortunately. And overall, too, I thought most of the characters felt very cardboard and generic in this film. There's just not a character in this film that stands out to me at all. I felt every possible character they used in this film could have been interchangeable for another character, another person, another actor or actress. Very cardboard characters, very generic. Really didn't care about any of them, unfortunately. And overall, too, I thought the film overall felt very directionless to me. There's just a lot of scenes, like I said, where it takes forever for the plot to get going. There's just a lot of, misdirects and obvious stuff. And, and that's another thing with this film, too. It's also very predictable. It's a very predictable plot. You know exactly where it's going to go. There's just no surprises at all. I feel like I know exactly where they were going. Every time you thought you were going to get a plot twist, you know exactly where the film's going to go. So that's another negative I had too. It's very predictable. But yeah, like I was saying though, like it's very directionless too. Like it just has, um, like the first half is just very, we don't know where it's going kind of a thing. And like I said, that's totally fine if you want to have a slow burn and if you want to keep the audiences guessing. But you got to have a direction. You got to have a consistent form of this is our story. This is the direction we're going. Not just let's do this directionless thing for a while and then we'll throw aliens in there eventually. It's just like you got to have a little bit more of a direction than that. But overall, guys, I'm going to give Alien Romulus a 7.5 out of 10. It's okay. There's things about it that are fine. Like I said, use of sound and having the action in camera was probably the better parts of this film. But like I said, it's just another Alien film. It's just not trying anything new still. Very slow first half, very predictable. Cardboard characters, directionless direction. So just a lot of things about it that I thought could have been better. So if you're a hardcore Alien fan, maybe check it out. I mean, don't go out of your way to see it. I don't think it's that great, but at the same time, though, it's not the worst Alien film that comes out. It's certainly not as bad as like an Alien 3 or Alien Resurrection or anything like that. It's okay. Go into it knowing that it's not perfect. Like I said, for sure be a fan of the Alien franchise. I think you're going to have the most fun with it just because it does reference events from earlier films so much. But if like you're a casual Alien fan, if you're just kind of there to check it out, I think you can skip it then. So 7.5 out of 10. It's an okay film. Go into it with caution if you choose to see it.